Hello and welcome to Reporters. Well, this week we're taking an in-depth look at the ugly face of fashion, or more specifically, the ugly working conditions in these sweatshops that churn out trendy wares at cutthroat prices. Turkey is one of the world's main producers of jeans, and with the current demand for stonewashed jeans being all the rage, factories have developed cost-cutting ways to cater to the massive demand, hiring thousands of workers to manually sandblast the denim, but with little care taken to make sure that they do wear protective gear or face masks. Now, as a result, a worrying number of employees have been struck down with silicosis, which is also known as potter's rot. It's a type of lung disease caused by repeated dust inhalation. Silicosis is extremely painful, it's irreversible and deadly. Some 44 workers have lost their lives in Turkey alone. Hundreds have fallen ill, although campaigners say the real figure is likely to be far higher, since many workers are taken on illegally, in secret, without the right papers or the right medical insurance. But who's to blame then? The massive firms that order their jeans to be made in Turkey, or the subcontractors who enforce these sandblasting techniques? Well, Hosvenket's Asya Shihab and Gökhan Acun met the workers to hear their thoughts. Take a look.
Istanbul, gateway to the East and global jeans capital. For over 20 years, most of the jeans that are worn in Europe have come out of the city's factories. The local specialty is stonewashed denim. Turkish manufacturers have developed an expertise over the years while benefiting from a cheap and flexible workforce. But the workers are now paying a very high price. In downtown Istanbul, a crowd gathers to protest this major health scandal. Today, several thousand Turks working in the jeans industry suffer from silicosis.
Do you see how little a human life is worth? How we must struggle just for our basic human rights?
A cry of distress that is barely heard. The nodules that appear on this X-ray are caused by silicosis. This lung disease is caused by the inhalation of silica dust. Ibrahim, aged 42, suffers from the disease. It is incurable.
I feel very weak. I can't work, I get tired very quickly, I have no appetite, and I've lost 7 kilos. There are some medications, but they're expensive.
Silicosis is usually a miner's disease, but Ibrahim has never worked in a mine. He contracted the disease after 3 years of working in a jeans blasting workshop.
We were working for very well-known jean brands in illegal workshops. We blasted the jeans to bleach them. This is where we got the disease. They gave us these yellow, poor-quality masks. We worked in terrible conditions for 12 hours every day.
In 4 years, 550 patients have been diagnosed so far. But it is possible that at least 3,500 to 5,000 have contracted silicosis, based on the number of workers who work in this sector, which is around 10,000.
This is the process, filmed before the technique was forbidden last spring. The sand is blasted at high pressure directly onto the jeans in a very confined space. But there were even worse conditions.
I would have loved to work in these conditions. This is a soft version of blasting. The people in this video are using 3 times less dust than in the old system, because the sand is blasted in a kind of niche. If you'd filmed the old system, you wouldn't have been able to see the workers, as they would have been in a cloud of dust.
A huge number of workshops opened in this suburb of Istanbul in the 90s, when there was a high demand for stonewashed jeans. Bekir and Ibrahim take us to the place where they used to work. Like any legitimate business, Bekir's workshop was in plain view.
I used to work here, but the workshop has a new name now. The blasting was done here. A compressor was used. There was the equivalent of 6 or 7 lorry loads of sand in this building. We worked in tiny rooms, 2 meters by 2 meters. We did it for 12 hours.
Today, the sand is gone, but security standards are still not always met. Here, in this workshop where we filmed without permission, the workers fixing the colour are not wearing masks. A little further away is another workshop where Bekir and Ibrahim say sandblasting was done. The owners accept that the practice was widely in use, but deny having used it themselves. To wash the denim, they now use sanding or chemical products. But they did not allow us to film the entire process, as again, safety standards were obviously being ignored. One subcontractor believes that the ultimate responsibility lies with the buyers.
Turkey is responsible for doing this, but it's really the people who are buying the jeans who are to blame. It is the rich who are responsible, not the poor. There's always a demand for the jeans. This means that the big brands are producing them in places that do not apply European standards, such as India, Bangladesh, and Egypt. They say it's bad for your health, but they continue producing them.
While all the major brands deny using sandblasting, the list of people suffering from silicosis grows. A year ago, a committee was formed to try to help the former sandblasters. Doctors and lawyers volunteered together with the workers to pursue those legally responsible. But the majority of employers have disappeared. So the first procedures of the committee are targeting the Ministry of Labour and the municipality of Istanbul.
The primary responsibility for this scandal lies with the state, as they are supposed to be in charge of controlling the system. You cannot allow entrepreneurs and bosses to do as they like. You cannot allow the textile manufacturing world to run without rules and regulations. The state is responsible for regulating these workplaces and shutting down those with hazardous conditions for the health of workers.
So were the Turkish authorities aware or not? It took us a few more days to get an appointment with the branch of the Ministry of Labour responsible for regulating Istanbul. The silicosis scandal is embarrassing for the government, as 95% of the workers were illegal and were not covered by Social Security. According to this inspector, the workshops were impossible to detect.
These were illegal workshops. They did not appear in any register. Like houses in a shanty town, they appeared overnight. They would be in business for 3 days, and if they were reported, they just disappeared. It is hard to stop them. It was also hard for the municipalities to detect them.
Today, sandblasting is illegal, and the security measures and controls are reinforced. But the official discourse is not always in tune with the reality in the workshops.
We try to minimize the risks, to reduce them to zero. So we now enforce the use of this kind of mask.
We catch up with Ibrahim in his neighborhood. A father and the head of his family, Ibrahim is now destitute. Ibrahim was an illegal worker and cannot prove who employed him. 4 months ago, he was kicked out of his flat with his wife and their 3 children. Since then, they live in the basement of this school, where his wife is employed as a cleaner. His illness is only worsened by the unhealthy living conditions.
My aim now is to get my pension and social security. My employers disappeared, and the government can't find them. When they do, I should be able to get my pension. They're trying, but I don't know if I will live long enough to see it happen. Nothing is certain in Turkey.
Every time I see stonewashed jeans, I think, these are what made my husband sick. Maybe people are happy to buy these jeans, but it hurts me to see them. It makes us feel very sad.
To find the majority of the victims of silicosis, we have to go to one of the poorest regions in Turkey, a mainly Kurdish area. This is the region of Bingöl, 1,000 kilometers east of Istanbul. This is where the first deaths from silicosis were officially recorded. Most of the inhabitants of this village emigrate to Istanbul as there is no work to be found here. Over 70 young men from these villages went to work in the sandblasting workshops. Aged between 22 and 25, they came home with a death sentence. Like his friends, Zeki found out that he had contracted silicosis during his military service health examination.
We knew that the dust was dangerous, but at that point, we didn't know that it could kill you. I worked for 2 years. Some of my friends worked for 5 and 6 years. Afterwards, we heard about the disease. Then 2 of my friends died and we got scared. We stopped working.
Our workplace was filled with dust from the sand. We worked on trousers like these. And we couldn't even see what we were blasting. We were all around 15 to 16. We didn't know it was dangerous. If our families had known, they wouldn't have let us work down there. Inspectors came, the police took bribes, they disappeared. They didn't ask us any questions, didn't say that it was dangerous. They didn't say anything.
For this work, the blasters were paid 350 euros a month, a vital sum of money to help support their families back in their villages. Today, they have children of their own, but they can't support them anymore. No one will employ them. 11 people have already died from silicosis in the village. The last one was buried 6 months ago.
This is where we'll all end up, here. That's what this disease does. There's no treatment, no medicine. They tell us to go home, we go home and wait to die. This friend of ours was poor. He didn't have a penny in his pocket when he died. No help, no income, no pension, and yet he'd worked so hard. There are no rights in this country.
With their last ounce of energy, they are battling for a pension from the state with the support of the committee. Not for themselves, they say, but for their children, so that the next generation won't also become victims of this deadly fashion.
OK, well, that's it then for this edition of Reporters. Until the next time, bye-bye for now.